actually recording this meeting so that I can share this with some of those who can't make it today. And also the presentation will be for 40 minutes, and we can have a question and answer session at the end. Nelly's primary and secondary education was in England, and she has a BSc, Bachelor of Science, Information and Systems degree from University College of Dublin, and a MSc from QUT. She was a 3-minute finalist last year at UW, and she was in the Dean's List in 2017 at QUT, and a triple scholarship holder at QUT as well. So she's a final year PhD candidate in the Faculty of Business and Law, and within the School of Business. So I have a great privilege to welcome Nelly to take over and tell your story.
Oh, thank you so much, Mario. Felt like you read out everything that I've done. But yeah, it's wonderful to be here today. I am feeling a bit poorly, so if I stop for a coughing fit, please excuse me. This presentation today it's quite personal for me as well, because it looks at my journey in the field or during field work, data collection, and also it looks at my personal journey as well in society, and looks at myself as a person as well. This is based on one of the papers that Mario and I recently published. Well, it's still ahead of print in the Qualitative Research in Organizations and Management Journal. So the topic today is identity work by a young female academic homecomer, quest for social power in masculine settings. So what is autoethnography? Now I want to go more into theory and bring that into context of my experiences. So autoethnography means to write about a group of people and the researcher. So the researcher plays quite an important role in autoethnography. This sort of autoethnographic research really embraces the self and the I of research. So there's a continuum within that as well. There's researcher and researched, and then researcher is researched. Researcher and research, in that sort of study, researcher is not the only participant, but the researcher's experiences are co-constructed through their interactions with the other people, or the people that's being researched, or the participants of the research. On the opposite end, there's researcher is researched. And in this sort of a study, researcher is the only participant, the sole focus of the research. This sort of a study would go more towards like a self-written autobiography almost. So within this continuum, my study falls in between. So it's a combination. And I embrace the self and the other. So I write about my experiences, but my experiences with the interactions of others as well. And this is primarily to reduce conceptual broadsiding, which could be a very big limitation of autoethnographic studies as well, because conceptual broadsiding is when you depart from that theoretical aspects or the concepts of this study and end up writing more about yourself. It's about trying to flourish yourself, make yourself look better. And then that departs from the credibility, trustworthiness, or those aspects of the research. So we put this study in the middle to ensure that we're not really departing from that aspect of the study as well. And if you also, read the paper, you see that it's a collaborative autoethnography that I did with Mario. Mario has previously done autoethnographic work as well. So he was there to guide me through this process so that I am not consumed by my personal experiences, but I analyze these personal experiences in looking at theory and how I can develop that instead of just writing things about myself. So I think that's a very important thing I learned from writing this paper as well. So something that a main focus of this paper is looking at who am I, or my identity. And something that frames this is the intersectionality. The concept of intersectionality originates from the inequalities that African American women face as a minority in their gender, that is being women, and then their race being African American. So African American women would face more inequalities as compared to, let's say, a white American woman or a white American male. And in concept of intersectionality explores how multiple identities are experienced and are altered in different contexts and relation to structures of power. So when I look at myself and look at who I am, these are certain intersectionalities that I would face because of my physical stature being small, my gender being a woman, my gender and also my ethnicity being a Sri Lankan woman would perhaps put me in certain contexts I'd fit intersectionality or inequalities because of that. Or my physical stature and being a PhD student, where some people would perhaps, say, oh, are you sure you're a PhD student? You look like you're in high school. I mean, these are things that would put me at a disadvantage as well. And I've mentioned some of the stories or some of the experiences that I had because of these inequalities in my in this paper as well. So one of the things that I faced was I was at a conference, and actually a very like a professor, he came up to me and said, are you okay? Are you here with your mum? And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, is your mum here? I'm like, no, I'm doing a presentation later. And then that's when he realized that I'm actually a PhD student and I'll be presenting at the conference. I actually thought that was funny. I know it's easy to feel like, okay, maybe, okay, that's quite rude or something. But in that moment, I thought that was funny. And I knew he thought that because of the way I looked. And things like that are quite interesting, the experiences that I have because of the way I look. And this could lead to potential loss of power in situations and inequalities as well. So what is social power? This is a main thing that comes from that lack of or the intersectionalities that you face and social power. They're quite related. So what is social power is the potential to influence or control others. French and Raven, 1959, came up with 5 different social power techniques. So there's reward power, when someone believes another can provide them with desired rewards. There's cohesive power, when someone believes another can punish them. Sorry, I got a cough. Give me 1 minute. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it, Nelly. Sip of water would help, yeah, for sure.
It's that weird tickling feeling in the throat. So the third one is legitimate power, when one believes another has the right to exert power over them or others. Referent power is one's perception of another. And expert power is when one believes another possesses special knowledge or expertise. In this paper, or in this research, we specifically look at referent power, that is one's perception of another. And there are several reasons why we specifically focus on one aspect of social power. While this may be seen as a limitation of this study, I think because we wanted to look in depth, I think it's important to just focus on specifics and explore those in depth as well, and perhaps leave these other power strategies for future studies as well. So why is referent power important to my experiences? Well, previously I said certain intersectionalities that I would face, being of my gender, my physical stature and things. So in terms of social power and gender, the understanding is that men have more access to more social power than women. That's overall looking at all these 5 types of social power strategies. But looking at it individually, men and women have access to referent power, that is one's perception of another. This is because according to theory or previous studies, referent power aligns with the female gender role expectations. So because women are seen as warm, agreeable, nice, kind, people who are with empathy and things like that, over being direct, competitive, aggressive, that thought to be direct and assertive strategies of men. And to gain referent power, women would use indirect strategies, such as smiling or dependency, pouting. I mean, I'm not going to deny that I haven't used any feminine features to, like, gain referent power in situations. That's something someone would do when they feel like they don't have power in a situation. And if that's the way to gain that power going forward, will support them in that, or would be beneficial, that's something someone would do. And I feel like that's something that I did in my data collection as well, which I explain in my stories that I reveal in this paper as well. So what about my physical stature and social power? Physical stature influences how others see us and how we see ourselves. So I know that small people, sorry. I know that petite people are called dwarves, midgets, freaks, things like that. I actually put some memes here because these are quite common memes that just flows around social media and people tag me. It's sort of funny, but also it undermines my other capabilities and abilities as well. So a petite person is thought of as varying from the normal body size. And someone who's under 4'10" is considered petite and also disabled in America as well. And these features, being petite or a dwarf, would affect how the society perceives us in relation to our height and age, height and capabilities, height and maturity, height and physical attractiveness. All these things would be affected by the way that a short person looks. And it can be worse for women as well, being short and women, because we're thought of as childlike, or like, oh, she's so cute, things like that are so common, or girlish, and things like that. These are common terms for a short woman. I mean, are they insulting? Does that make me inferior? Are these things stereotyping and demeaning ideals of females? These are potential questions, which I wouldn't want to answer right now. But what I want to say is that being short relates to lack of power that a certain person would have in their personal, social, and work spheres. So the construction industry, why does that bring a huge effect for this study? Well, the construction industry has a deep-rooted masculine culture which is associated with stereotypical male behaviors, such as denying of emotions. If you show emotions, you're thought of as weak. You're showing physical strength, being aggressive, competitive. I mean, these are for Sri Lankan construction industry, but I have a few friends in the Australian construction industry, and I feel like it's same. They also have a deep-rooted masculine culture. And because of this, in the construction industry, it affects how men perceive, behave, and position women in the workplace as well. Because if a woman shows emotions, they'll be like, oh, it's because she's a woman, she must be weak, things like that. And it's worse in Sri Lanka because it is considered a male-dominated society. And it's specifically because tradition and culture determines what a woman is, what a woman should be. And a woman who challenges these perspectives or the traditional concepts are thought of as disrespectful, loose, provocative. And it's often women themselves that seem to hold on to these traditions as well. And because of that, other women end up, being unequal in society as well. So what does this mean for me as a female, a petite woman, a young researcher going into the construction industry in Sri Lanka to do my data collection? And that's what I explore in this paper, and what it means for my social power in these situations. Sorry, 1 minute. Sorry, it's just coughing. So one of the stories that I wrote in this paper was called Foreigner in My Own Country. Now, before I said all the experiences that I had in England and in Sri Lanka and in Australia now was the experiences of Nelly. And when I went into the construction industry, when I looked, if I went to a construction firm in Colombo, which is the metropolitan city, it's very westernized. Everyone accepts Western ideas. So I thought, okay, I can present myself as Nelly. I don't have to downplay or cover my attributes to be accepted. And one of the experiences was when I went into one of the construction sites. I was meeting with an engineer, and he was brought up in Colombo, obviously from a westernized context in Colombo. So I thought, okay, I can be myself here, And then I introduced myself. I was like, hi, I'm Nelly. I'm here to do the interviews and things like that. And as soon as I said Nelly, he started laughing, and he's like, oh, Nelly, is that Nelly? So Nelly is a fruit. It's a very bitter fruit in Sri Lanka. I think in English, it's called Indian gooseberries or something like that. It's disgusting. It's very bitter. And he just started laughing in my face. He thought this joke was hilarious. And I was a professional. I was trying to be professional, and I'm the researcher here. So I just stood there and I looked at him. I smiled because I didn't want to be rude, because I needed interviews for my study. That's another thing that was in my head, I don't want him to be angry. If I say something now, he'll be angry and this would affect our interview. This is the beginning of our relationship as a researcher and participant. So everything depended on my response here to his joke. So I smiled. And I later realized that this is a gender appropriate strategy to avoid becoming that unfeminine sort of person. I was trying to present myself as a female, and because of that, perhaps because of traditional expectations, I just stood there smiling. And then our conversation went on. In like 5 minutes, he was still smiling and he wasn't giggling. He wasn't taking this seriously, that I really needed a proper interview. And that's when I thought, okay, I need to put my foot down. I can't be smiling and letting him walk all over me. And I was a bit more assertive then after that. And after that, he realized that I'm serious as a person. And although I'm small, female, and these things shouldn't overpower my role as a researcher in this context. So it's during my conversations with Mario and writing this paper that I realized that his joke was to assert his power over me. He was trying to control this situation. Perhaps he felt like he was losing control because I'm a short, small female asking him questions. And he was the engineer. He probably thought, I am the powerful person here. And I just wonder sometimes, whether he would have done the same thing if he was a male researcher, if he would have made jokes about that male person, or whether if it was a bigger or a taller female, whether he would have done the same thing. It's just wondering, thinking about that situation. In the paper, I do write several other stories, but given the time, I'm only focusing on that one. But overall, as of all the experiences that I had, what I realized was that I was using identity work as a strategy to gain social power. So revealing certain aspects of myself or covering certain aspects of myself. For example, after that interaction with that engineer, I ended up using my real name Nilupali in all the other interviews, because I didn't want anyone to think that I was an outsider first. And I didn't want them to think that I wasn't respecting the traditions of Sri Lanka. So I was using, in other contexts as well, I ended up using certain identity work strategies to gain social power. And something else that I realized was that it's also my own perception that determined my access to or lack of access to social power as well. Perhaps in that single situation, I didn't have social power, but I realized that other situations I actually had social power to begin with because of other sources of social power, such as expert power because of my position as a researcher. But because of those ideas that I had in my head, I constantly kept thinking, okay, I have no social power going into the construction industry. And that really influenced my experiences as well. So, certain ways that I used identity work was manipulating appearances. For example, I wore really modest clothing. I know that construction industry, when you're going into field, you have to wear long sleeves and long pants and things like that. But I was going into certain office environments that were not in the construction field. And I didn't have to dress like that. I could have been much more, I could have dressed up, but still be professional. But I was really trying to get that image of a traditional Sri Lankan girl, so I wouldn't end up being bullied. And those are certain identity work strategies that I used so that I could build a relationship and be considered an insider in the research and research relationships. So the concept of academic homecomer became very important in our discussion in the paper as well. What was interesting was that I was born in Sri Lanka. I'm a Sri Lankan person. But when I went back for field work, I was an outsider. I was a stranger. I felt like a foreigner in my own country. And I think that's something that hasn't really been explored from someone from a, there are stories of this in Western context, but not in Eastern or ethnic context where a person feels like a stranger in their own country. And I think I realized that it's because of these Western influences that I had. I've traveled and perhaps I've departed from being that traditional Sri Lankan, and this may have influenced me to feel like a stranger and a foreigner in my own country. And another thing I realized was, even though I was native to Sri Lanka, I was not considered an insider by default. The participants did not see me as, oh yeah, you're one of us, because there were other factors that was at play, not just my ethnicity or that I was a Sri Lankan. My gender, my physical stature, my position as a researcher, and things like that really influenced me as during this data collection as well, to not be considered an insider. And that's when we came across partial insider experiences of an academic homecomer. So these experiences that I had was not a total insider experiences, because I wasn't a total insider. I was a partial insider, where certain aspects made me a Sri Lankan, but certain aspects really just pushed me away from being an insider as well. And this last quote here I got from the paper: being a total or a partial insider does not exclude a female researcher from structures of power that exist in society. So regardless of if I'm a total or a partial insider, I experience these struggles of power or to gain social power because of my Western influences, gender, age, physical stature, and being a researcher. So several highlights of this paper that I want to mention that I haven't been able to talk in this presentation due to time, but we look at how social norms guide the researchers' understanding of masculine society, industry, and identity work strategies. So as I said before, sometimes I felt like I didn't have power, when now looking back, perhaps I did have power in some situations. And then secondly, we look at how the researcher as a woman falls into patterns of abiding by gender appropriate reactions. We look at how early career researchers in their native country constantly battle to discover their professional, cultural, and intersectional identities. I think this will be really important for a lot of PhD students, the experiences that I've gone through, because I know myself, a lot of other students, in fact, even though they're doing their PhD in Australia or in a Western country, they would go back to their home countries for data collection. And I'm sure a lot of people have similar experiences as well. And we also make theoretical linkage between identity work and social power in researcher-research relationships. And lastly, we have implications of researcher as the vulnerable participant, because a lot of research looks at the researched or the participants of the research as being sensitive, and they've explored that. But the researcher themselves can be vulnerable and sensitive in this context as well. And we really explore and unearth those things in our paper as well. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and hopefully it's on time. So
Well done, Nelly. Well done.
you.
Well done. And it is really brave of you to share your story and put it out there, not only during the presentation and in publication form as well. That takes a lot of courage and guts, and definitely that's going to help and pave the way for a lot more others to stand up to the experiences that you went through during your data collection process. So thank you so much, and thank you, Nelly, despite your cold, doing a wonderful job at presenting as usual, and then telling your story insightfully and bravely, I might add. And thank you everyone for sharing your views and being here. We'll see you again in our next CCCM conversation. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thank
Yes,
you.
take care everyone.